Welcome to Math Link Academy. I am Mr. C, and this is where we're going to connect the dots. We're going to talk about using metric conversion. So for this particular lesson, we want to talk about the linear of using metric conversion. So let's get started. So metric units of linear measure. One of the things we need to understand is based on the power of 10. I believe the rest of the world use the metric system, and America, or United States of America, we still tend to use the metric system in some areas, and then also we use inches, feet in other areas. So I think this is something that we need to know so we can be compliant to the rest of the world and know some things that everybody else is doing around the world. So it's a very simple unit, and it's based on 10, power of 10. And the most frequent used units of length, and since we're talking about just the length, is we're going to talk about meter. Meter has to do with length. So meter is our first one. And how I look at it, if you look up here, our meter is like our middleman. Remember, we talked about that in some previous units. If you recall and looked at some of my past videos, meters is like the middleman. And so then you have kilometers, which is a lot. And then you have centimeters as we go down below, and then millimeters, which are smaller than meter. And so we're going to talk about how do we look at this base 10 and how we understand how these particular units work for the metric. Again, 1 meter equals 1 meter. Okay, we're going to use that as the middle. So again, if you know the meter is the middle person or the middle link to all the units that we have for the linear, this will help you out. Now, what we're going to do, let's go downwards. And so 1 decameter, or decimeter, 1 decimeter is 1/10 of a meter, or 0.1. That's deca. So let's make sure we understand that decimeter. 1 centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. It's smaller than a meter. All these I'm giving you are smaller. So we use these abbreviations, CM. And then 1 millimeter is 1/1000th of a meter. They're small. It's very small, smaller than a centimeter. Now, there are numbers that are bigger than meters we talk about, and that's decameter. So this is deca. 1 decameter equals 10 meters. So if you have 10 meters, that's 1 decameter. If you had 100 meters, that's a hectometer. And if you have 1,000 meters, that's a kilometer. And so what you want to do is learn this particular chart, learn how the words, and making sure we know which direction we're going when we talk about a linear unit, and we're talking about meters when we talk about linear units. Since the metric system is based on powers of 10, the easier method of conversion between metric units is by moving the decimal place. So a lot of you may know how to do this without multiplying or dividing and using the unit fraction, what we're going to use. You may already know, just move the decimal place over 1, 2, 3 decimal places to the right or to the left. To express a given unit as a larger unit, move the decimal to left the number of places between the two units. So we want to move the decimal places to the left. When you express a given unit as a smaller unit, move the decimal place to the right of placing between the two units. So to express a larger unit, you move it to the left. To express as a smaller unit, you move it to the right. Now let's look at this example. We express 65 decimeters as a meter. Now we're going from a small to a bigger, which is meter. Meter is bigger than a decimeter. Remember, we got to know the relationship between this. So let's actually do this one right now. We'll do it on this particular board. And what we have is 65, and we have decimeter, And in this case, we're going to use our unit fraction. We need to know the relationship, decimeter and meter. So what do we know? We know, listen, that decimeter, that is 10 decimeters equals 1 meter, or you can multiply by 0.1. So in this case, if you notice here, our units will cancel. We only left with meters, and so we look at 65 divided by 10. In this case, you'll write the answer as 6.5 meters. So 65 decimeters is equal to 65 meters. Again, just knowing our conversion rate for this. So let's clear this chart and do another one, do another example. Again, if you know how to move the decimal places, this is telling you how to move it from a smaller to a larger. You move the decimal place to the left. And so the decimal place is moved to the left, one direction. Let's do another example. So let's look at this one. We want to express 0.28 decimeters as a centimeter. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. I want to show you one way. If you're still uncomfortable. And so we got a decimeter and we want to convert it to centimeter. Now let's say you don't know the ratio between centimeter and decimeter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use meter as my middle person. So this will be decimeter. And notice right here, I'm going to change up to my color black and meter, and go from meter, and then we'll change up a little bit here back to red, and know the ratio between centimeter. Again, you don't have to do it this way, but this is one way to look at it if you're still uncomfortable. So we do know the ratio between decimeter and meter. Yes, we just did that. So we know that, and let's put this in a different color. We know that 10 decimeter equals 1 meter. We also know that 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. And so in this case, and I'm going to do some cross multiplication. We can cross out a zero out of here. Our DM is crossed out, our M is crossed out. So we're left with centimeter. And so all we're doing here is multiplying this by 10, which would gives us 10 times 0.28, and it'd be centimeters. And then in this case, our answer will be centimeters. Now let's look at our PowerPoint and see what we have here. So in this case, it's talking about how to move the decimal to the place. And they end up with the same answer that we got using the way of just moving your decimal to one or two different places. Now let's look at another example for linear. We got 360, and that's centimeters. We want to convert that to decameter, so a decameter. Again, I'm going to use meter as that middle person or that middle link. But if you know the direction to go with your decimal places, use that too if you want to use that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write down 360 centimeters. And I'm going to multiply that using a unit fraction of centimeters on the bottom, meters on the top, and then do the same thing. Meters on the bottom and decameter on the top. So we know our relationship here. So we understand that 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. We also know that 10 decameter equals 1 meter. Oops. So that's wrong in the case because I want to make sure we do that correctly. So we're above the meter. In this case, it's 10 meters equals 1 decameter. And that's correct. So let's make sure we understand why we have those values there. Decameter is greater than a meter. So it takes 10 meters to equals 1 decameter. So in this case, look at this, our units will cancel, cross cancel, we're left with decameter, and we end up here with 360 over, be 100 times 10, have 1,000, and our units which is left over will be decameter. And again, when you write this down, we're going to say this is approximately, when we do the division, or this is equal to 0.360 decameter. And then that's what we have as our answer there. Let's do one more example. Let's say we have 1 kilometer and we want to convert that to millimeter. Again, we're going from a larger to a smaller, so that means we got to move our decimal to the right. But in this case, when you use the unit fraction, and so let's do this here. So we want to say 1 kilometer times, and let's go kilometer to meter, because that'll cancel out the kilometer, and then meter to millimeter. So let's figure that out. So we understand it's going to take, in our case, it's going to take 1,000 meters to equal 1 kilometer. And it's also going to take 1,000 millimeters to equal 1 meter. So in this case, we're going to cancel out our units. Look at this, our units cancel, and so we're left with millimeters. And we just multiply it through, where we get our answer here. So in this case, when we multiply 1 times 1,000 times 1,000, and 0, 0, 0, comma, 0, 0, 0, 1, and then this would be millimeters. So this gives me 1 million millimeters when we do the math there. Hopefully this helped going over the length using meters as far as the metric system. But if you have any questions, feel free to go over this particular video and also look at some of the supplementary material we have on our math link website. Again, thank you for watching this video. Remember, we're here to connect the dots, and this math link is where we put it all together.